Hello friends, before we start today's stories, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment which story you like most, where you're from, and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now, let's begin. I've spent most of my life hiking through the Appalachian ranges, but nothing prepared me for what happened near Dead Man's Peak in North Carolina. It was late October of 2018, when the air had that cold bite that burns your lungs. I was 34, an outdoor photographer by profession, and I'd just landed a small freelance job from a travel magazine, shooting autumn landscapes before the winter hit. I drove my rusted black Ford F-150 up the gravel road that led to the mountain's edge. The locals in a nearby town called Brentwood Hollow told me to avoid Dead Man's Peak. The air's wrong up there, an old gas station clerk said, his fingers yellow from tobacco. Folks who camp there don't always come back. I laughed it off. Every small mountain town has its ghost stories, right? I reached the base around 4 p.m. and found an old ranger cabin, abandoned from what I could tell. Moss had eaten through the roof shingles, and the porch steps bowed under my boots. The sign outside said, Cabin Number 14, Forestry Division. Inside it smelled like rot, old wood, and animal fur. But it was better than pitching a tent in the freezing wind. I set up my camera gear, lit a small fire in the rusted stove, and settled in for the night. Around 10 p.m., as I reviewed some shots on my laptop, I heard what sounded like footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. Crunch. Pause. Crunch. I froze. The nearest town was 20 miles away. No lights, no hikers, no trails nearby. I grabbed my flashlight and slowly walked to the window. Nothing. Only the silver glow of the moon bleeding through the mist. I told myself it was probably a deer. But then, 3 knocks on the door. Not pounding, just soft, rhythmic knocks. Knock. 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 I waited. My heart thumped in my ears. Hello, I called out. Is someone out there? Silence. After a long pause, I opened the door just a crack, and the air outside was warm. That's what threw me off. It was 37 degrees, and yet when I stepped outside it felt humid, almost like a breath against my face. I scanned the porch with my flashlight. Nothing. Just muddy footprints on the wooden boards. Bare footprints. Human. And they led off the porch, into the woods. I backed inside, locked the door, and stayed awake till dawn. The next morning, I packed my things. My gut screamed at me to leave, but the magazine deadline was close, so I climbed higher up the ridge to get sunrise shots. The air was crisp, silent, no birds, no wind. Even the leaves seemed to hold their breath. That's when I found the campsite. A torn tent, half buried in leaves, a rusted metal mug, a flannel jacket hanging from a branch like it had been placed there carefully. And next to it, a small wooden cross, carved crudely, tied with red string. On it, the words, "For Jacob." May he find his way out, I took a photo of it, not thinking much. But when I reviewed the pictures later that night on my camera screen, there was a faint figure behind the cross, a man's silhouette, half transparent, staring straight toward the lens. I checked the next frame. Nothing there. No one behind me. No shadow. Just the cross. By dusk, fog had rolled in, thick like smoke. The forest around the cabin became unnaturally quiet. And then came the whispers. At first, faint, like wind catching on the edges of words. Then clearer. You shouldn't be here. Not again. Leave before the moon rises. I dropped my camera. My breath turned sharp, cold. It wasn't the wind. It was inside the cabin. The stove went out. My flashlight flickered. And somewhere behind me, in the black corner of the room, I heard the sound of bare feet on wood. I didn't dare turn around. Those soft, dragging footsteps behind me. They didn't sound like someone walking normally. It was as if skin was sticking to the floorboards, peeling away with each slow step. My flashlight flickered again, dimming to a faint pulse of yellow. I turned it toward the sound and saw nothing. But the boards kept creaking, one after another, moving closer until they stopped right behind me. I ran out the front door. The fog outside was so thick, it swallowed everything. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. My breath came out in heavy bursts. I aimed the flashlight toward the trees, and for a split second, I saw a figure standing in the fog. Not solid, not transparent. Something in between. It looked like a man, barefoot, wearing torn clothes, his head tilted slightly as if he was listening. Then, his mouth moved, but no sound came out. I shouted, "Who are you?" He didn't answer, just turned his head to the side and vanished. I don't know how long I stood there. The forest felt alive, like it was watching me breathe. I forced myself back into the cabin, bolted the door, and sat near the stove with my camera on my lap like a weapon. Around 2 a.m., I must have dozed off. When I woke, the fire was dead. But someone, or something, had drawn symbols on the cabin wall using ash. Circles, triangles, and a pattern that looked like an eye inside a mountain. And beneath it, written in uneven strokes, "He's still lost." I froze. I checked my camera again, scrolling through the photos from that day. There, frame number 143. The picture of the cross I'd taken earlier. But now, the red string around it was gone, and the cross looked fresh, like it had just been placed. I don't remember packing. I don't remember stepping outside. I just remember the forest feeling wrong, like every sound was reversed, birds chirping like whispers, wind rustling like faint breathing. Halfway down the slope, I found something sticking out of the dirt, a human hand, pale and stiff. My stomach turned. I stumbled back and saw that it was attached to a partially buried body, wearing the same flannel jacket that had been hanging at the old campsite. The tag inside said, "Property of Jacob Ellery," the same name carved on that wooden cross. I tried calling 911, but my phone had zero signal. I just ran. Didn't even grab my camera gear. I must have hiked 6 miles before I saw my truck. When I finally made it back to Brentwood Hollow, it was dawn. I burst into the sheriff's office, covered in dirt, shaking, trying to explain what I saw. Sheriff Mason, a tall man with deep lines under his eyes, listened quietly, then said, "Son, that area's been closed off since 2009. We lost a search team up there looking for a missing hiker named Jacob Ellery. Never found him. I told him I'd found the body." The sheriff sent a few deputies up the trail later that morning. They searched the area for 3 days. They found the cabin, yes, but no cross, no body, not even my gear, just footprints in the dirt. Bare, human footprints circling the cabin over and over again. 2 weeks later, Sheriff Mason called me back. He sounded tired. "You sure you saw a cross? With Jacob's name?" "Yeah," I said. "I took pictures, but my camera was gone." He sighed. "We did find something in that cabin's fireplace." "What was it?" "A camera. Burned halfway through. Only one image survived on the SD card. He emailed it to me. It was the same photo of the cross I'd taken. But this time, in the corner of the frame, I was standing next to it. The problem is, I was alone when I took that picture. I haven't gone back to Dead Man's Peak since. But sometimes, when I'm editing photos at night, I catch glimpses in the shadows of my reflection. A face standing just behind mine. Barefoot. Silent. Waiting. And sometimes, when I listen closely, I swear I can still hear the knocking. Knock. 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 My name's Noah Whitman, and for years, I worked as a field surveyor for a private mining company in northern Colorado. Our job was simple: hike remote ridges, take geological readings, and mark land points for potential excavation sites. In the summer of 2016, we were assigned to a stretch called Windmere Ridge, a part of the Rockies not even marked properly on most maps. Locals called it the Silent Valley, a deep cut between two steep slopes where wind supposedly never blew. I didn't think much of the name. Mountains always have strange weather pockets. But after what happened that week, I'll never forget that place. We arrived on July 10th. Me, my co-worker Grant Keller, and our field tech, Marissa Lorne. It was a 4-hour hike from the dirt road where our truck gave up. By sunset, we reached the ridge, a breathtaking view of sharp cliffs, twisted trees, and a narrow valley that seemed to hum faintly, like static in the air. That's when we realized it. The silence. Not quiet. Dead silence. No birds, no wind through the pines, no insects. Just the crunch of our boots on gravel. Marissa joked, maybe that's why they call it Silent Valley. Grant didn't laugh. It's not natural, he said, scanning the tree line. We set up camp near an old wooden marker, a weathered post driven into the dirt with the numbers 27A carved roughly into it. According to our company map, this was one of the last documented survey points from the 1950s, and no one had been back since. That night, around 11 p.m., I was sitting by the fire, reviewing GPS data. The screen glitched for a second, flickering with static. Then it displayed coordinates that didn't exist. Latitude 0, 0.0, 0, 0, 0. Longitude 0, 0.0, 0, 0, 0, before shutting off completely. I tapped the device, thinking it was low battery. But the strange part, the wind picked up right at that moment. A single gust, cold, strong, and whistling from inside the valley, where no wind had blown all day. Grant stood, eyes narrowed. Did you hear that? I did. It wasn't just wind. It was a voice. Faint. Like a whisper carried on the air. Go back. We froze. Marissa turned pale. I tried to convince everyone it was just echo distortion or the wind bouncing off the cliffs. But we all knew the sound had words. We decided to call it a night early. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to footsteps crunching outside my tent. Not animal sounds. Boots. Heavy, steady, pacing in a circle around the camp. I unzipped the tent slowly, peeking through the flap. The fire was dying, glowing faint orange. No one there. But the footsteps didn't stop. They just moved away from camp, toward the ridge trail, fading gradually into the dark. Grant, I whispered. No response. Marissa was still asleep, breathing slow. I waited a minute, then stepped out, flashlight in hand. I followed the trail a few yards until I saw movement near the old marker post. Someone, or something, was kneeling there. The figure looked like a man, hunched over, head bowed. His back faced me, and his hands were pressed into the dirt. I couldn't see his face. I thought maybe it was Grant, but Then he spoke, and the voice didn't sound human. "You shouldn't dig here." I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the rocks, and the figure was gone. Just gone. No sound, no steps, no trace. The next morning, I told Grant and Marissa what I'd seen. Grant didn't even question it. He just said, "We're leaving tonight." But before we packed, he wanted to check one last reading from the lower part of the valley, a depression surrounded by old mine shafts that had collapsed decades ago. We hiked down around noon. The air felt thick, heavy, like the oxygen itself didn't want to move. Every breath hurt. As we descended, the temperature dropped nearly 15 degrees in minutes. We reached a flat clearing where the dirt looked disturbed, like it had been dug up recently. In the center stood a small wooden cross, splintered and nearly buried, with a tin tag nailed to it. The tag read, "Surveyor J.H., 1952. Marissa frowned. This wasn't in any of our records. I took a photo and brushed off the dirt. That's when I noticed something strange. Beneath the cross, the soil was wet. Not mud, dark, oily moisture seeping upward. Grant knelt to inspect it, but the moment his gloves touched it, the wind came again. That same cold gust. And the voice returned. "Leave it!" Grant jerked back, stumbling. We all heard it this time, clear as day. A man's whisper right next to our ears. We sprinted back up the ridge, panting. None of us spoke for a while. But that night, as we packed to leave, Grant went missing. I found his boots first, lying side by side near the marker post. Then his backpack, torn open, radio cracked. No blood, no struggle, no footprints leading away. The silence of that valley felt louder than anything I've ever known. Marissa was shaking. "We have to go." Now I agreed. We grabbed what we could and started the long climb back toward the truck trail. The forest had turned unnaturally dim, even though it wasn't sunset yet. The shadows were thicker, moving, almost breathing. Halfway up the ridge, we both froze. Ahead in the fog, someone was standing. Still, upright, facing away. It was Grant. Or, it looked like him. His clothes were the same, but his posture was wrong. Stiff, unnatural. His hands hung loosely, fingers bent backward like broken sticks. Marissa called out, "Grant!" He didn't respond. He just tilted his head slowly, until it cracked to one side, at an impossible angle. And then he smiled. I couldn't move. That thing wearing Grant's clothes just stood there in the fog, head twisted to one side, that awful crooked smile frozen on its face. Marissa was already crying, whispering, "That's not him, Noah. That's not him." I wanted to run, but I couldn't take my eyes off it. Then, it moved, not walked. It jerked, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. One sharp step, then another. Its legs didn't bend right, and that sound, bones grinding, click, crack, click. I yelled, "Stay back!" and threw my flashlight. It hit the ground near its feet, the beam rolling across the fog. For a split second, the light hit its face. It wasn't Grant's anymore. It was gray, skin torn, with black veins spreading from the eyes like ink in water. Marissa screamed, and we ran, blindly, tripping through the loose shale, sliding down slopes until the sound of our breathing drowned everything else out. We didn't stop until the ridge opened into a clearing, a stretch of uneven rocks and dead trees. My lungs burned, my legs shook, and I couldn't tell which direction led out anymore. The fog was thicker here, like it was alive, pulsing faintly in the moonlight. Marissa clutched my arm. "Noah, the wind." I listened. She was right. It wasn't silent anymore. It was breathing. A deep, slow inhale echoing through the entire valley. The trees swayed slightly, not from air, but from vibration. That's when I saw them. Shapes in the fog. Dozens of them. Tall, thin, human-like figures standing completely still among the trees, their outlines faint and translucent, each one facing toward us. Marissa whispered, "What are they?" I didn't answer. I just grabbed her hand and we ran again. Every direction looked the same. Fog, rocks, and those motionless silhouettes. We stumbled into what looked like another old survey point. A metal post half buried in dirt, numbers scratched off. Beside it lay an old, rusted helmet, crushed inward like someone had gripped it with bare hands. And then, just like that, the silence came back. Dead, suffocating silence. Even our own breathing sounded wrong, hollow, distant. I turned to tell Marissa we needed to climb higher, but she wasn't behind me, just gone. I spun around, shouting her name. The fog swallowed every sound. "Marissa! Marissa!" Nothing. I took one step forward, and something crunched under my boot. A radio, hers, cracked and still warm. I picked it up, trembling. Static buzzed faintly through the speaker. Then, "Noah, don't let it take you." Her voice, faint, terrified. And then, another voice layered beneath it. Low, male, rough. "You shouldn't have come back." The static screeched and the radio died. I don't know how long I wandered after that. The fog seemed endless, looping me in circles. I saw the same twisted tree 3 times. My compass spun non-stop. The silence pressed against my skull until I could hear my own heartbeat louder than my thoughts. Then I saw the light, flickering deep in the fog, warm and orange. It looked like a fire or a lantern. I followed it, stumbling, desperate for any sign of another person. The ground leveled out, and there it was. An old survey tent, half collapsed, covered in moss. Inside, a single lantern burned, even though there was no fuel in it. I stepped closer and realized the tent wasn't empty. There were photographs pinned inside. Hundreds of them, black and white, old and water-stained, all showing the same thing. Men in hard hats, surveyors, posing near the ridge. But every photo had one extra figure in the background, a shadow, standing among them, watching. The same thin silhouette I'd seen in the fog. My knees gave out. I crawled backward, hitting the lantern. The flame flickered violently, and for just one moment, I saw something standing behind me, reflected in the metal rim. A man, skin like ash, eyes hollow, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I turned around, nothing was there, only the wind, finally blowing. I ran. The fog started thinning. I could see treetops again, rocks glistening with dew. My watch said it was nearly 6 a.m. when I stumbled onto the dirt road and saw the faint shape of our truck through the morning haze. I almost broke down crying. I got in, locked the doors, and drove. I don't even remember how. I just remember the silence finally breaking as I crossed out of the valley. The first sound I heard was the wind, natural, normal wind. Then birds. I reported everything to the company. They sent a recovery team up the ridge 2 days later. They found no trace of Grant or Marissa. No tents, no markers, nothing. The official report said landslide likely buried the camp. But I know what I saw. A month later, I received an envelope at my home in Denver. No return address. Inside was a single photo, the same one I'd seen in that tent. 3 surveyors standing at Windmere Ridge, smiling for the camera. But this time, there were 4 figures. The 4th one was me, standing among them, expressionless, gray-skinned. And in the bottom corner of the photo, written in faint pencil, "Welcome back to the valley." My name's Lance Duvall, and I grew up in a small logging town in Montana, right at the base of the Bear Creek Ridge. If you've ever driven through there, you've probably seen it. Miles of dense pine, a single winding dirt road, and that jagged black peak that cuts through the clouds like a knife. Locals had plenty of stories about the ridge. Most of them were harmless. Hunters getting lost, old mines collapsing, strange animal calls at night. But there was one story people didn't talk about out loud. They called it the lights. Growing up, I always thought it was just another piece of folklore, until the night I saw them for myself, and the night my brother disappeared. It was October 3rd, 2007, the start of hunting season. My brother Caleb and I decided to camp out for a few days up near the ridge before the snow set in. We'd done it every year since we were kids. We loaded the truck with our rifles, gear, and a cooler of beer. The air smelled of pine sap and rain, and the sky was bleeding orange by the time we reached the base. We set up camp near an old logging road that hadn't been used in years. Trees growing right through the cracked asphalt. The mountains looked almost black against the sunset, and a cold wind whispered through the branches. Caleb poked at the fire with a stick. "You ever think about the old stories, Lance?" "What stories?" I asked. He smirked. "The lights. The ones that follow people at night. Dad said he saw them once." I laughed. Dad also said he saw Bigfoot. He didn't laugh back. By midnight, the temperature dropped fast. The woods went still. No crickets, no owls, just silence and the crackle of fire. Then Caleb pointed up the ridge. "Lance, what the hell is that?" At first, I thought it was lightning, a faint white flash near the tree line, but then another appeared, and another. 3 orbs of light hovering in a perfect triangle shape above the ridge, glowing softly like lanterns underwater. They didn't flicker like fire. They pulsed in rhythm, slow and deliberate. "Probably drones," I said, but my voice was shaking. "There's no signal out here," Caleb replied, "and no roads up or." We stood there, staring for almost a minute before the lights began to move. They floated lower, silently gliding between the trees, weaving through the dark pines. No sound, no engines, nothing. Then, as we watched, one of them split in two, like it was dividing itself. The smaller orb drifted closer, straight toward our camp. Caleb backed up. "No, no, no!" I grabbed my flashlight and pointed it at the thing, but the beam didn't reach. It just vanished into the glow. The air grew warm, humming softly, like a low electrical buzz deep in my chest. My skin started to tingle. Then the fire went out. Everything went black. The light hovered about 20 feet away now, white-blue and swirling like mist trapped inside glass. It wasn't bright. More like moonlight made solid. I reached for my brother, but he was gone. "Caleb!" I shouted. No answer. The light pulsed once, then shot upward, vanishing into the clouds. For a moment, all I could hear was my heartbeat. Then I heard Caleb's voice. Faint, somewhere behind me. "Lance, come here." I turned and followed the sound, flashlight shaking in my hand. The forest was dead silent again, but I kept hearing him call, each time from a different direction. "This way." "No, over here." That's when I realized it wasn't his voice at all. It was something copying him. I ran back to camp, but the tents were gone. The fire pit, gone. It was like we'd never even been there. Just untouched soil and my footprints. I don't remember sleeping, but I woke up to sunlight burning through my tent. Except, my tent was set up in a different spot. Higher up the ridge, I stumbled outside, dizzy. My watch had stopped at 2:17 a.m., and my phone showed no service. But the battery was full. Caleb's gear was there, his rifle, his boots, but not him. I searched the ridge for hours, shouting until my throat bled. I even climbed higher, following the faint impression of footprints that looked too deep, like something heavy had been walking beside him. Around noon, I reached the edge of a clearing I'd never seen before, a wide patch of flattened grass surrounded by trees scorched black. The air smelled burnt, metallic, and in the center of it was a perfect circle of gray ash. I found something half buried there. Caleb's necklace, the silver one he wore since Dad passed. When I picked it up, the metal was ice cold, even under the sun. I didn't go any further. Something inside me told me I wasn't supposed to be there. When I got back to town, I reported him missing. Search and rescue combed the ridge for 2 weeks. They found nothing. No gear, no body, no signs of struggle. The sheriff said maybe he fell in the river and was swept downstream. But I knew the truth. Because on the 3rd night of the search, when I went back up there alone, I saw the lights again. 3 of them. Hovering silently above the ridge, just like before. Only this time, one of them flickered red. And when I zoomed in with my camera lens, I swear to God, I saw a silhouette inside the light, a human shape, and it looked like Caleb. I didn't sleep for 3 nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those orbs hovering in the dark. 3 white lights, moving in perfect silence above the trees, like they were searching for something. Or someone. The local sheriff said grief does strange things to the mind. He told me to get some rest, let the professionals handle it. But the professionals didn't know what it was like to wake up every night at 2:17 a.m., the exact time my watch had stopped, and see a faint white glow through my window. It wasn't headlights. It wasn't moonlight. It was the same color, that cold, humming white blue, spilling through the glass, flickering in the shape of 3 slow pulses, almost like it was calling me back. 2 weeks after Caleb's disappearance, I went back to Bear Creek Ridge alone. I know how stupid that sounds. Everyone told me not to. But when you lose your brother, logic doesn't mean anything anymore. The ridge felt different this time. The forest was quiet in a way that didn't feel natural. The air was heavy, thick, and every step made the world feel more distant, like I was walking out of reality itself. Halfway up, I started hearing the hum again. Low. Constant. It wasn't from the wind or insects. It came from the ground. The soil itself vibrated under my boots. Then the forest opened into that clearing, the one with the circle of ash. Only this time, it wasn't empty. There was something standing in the middle of the clearing, a figure, thin and pale, facing away from me. Its skin looked stretched, almost translucent, veins faintly glowing under the surface. I thought maybe, for a split second, it was Caleb. My breath caught in my throat. "Caleb!" I shouted. The figure turned. It wasn't him. The face had no eyes, just smooth, blank skin where they should have been. And from its mouth, wide, trembling, came Caleb's voice. "Lance, why did you leave me?" My entire body froze. My rifle slipped from my hands. Then I saw the lights again, 3 of them, hovering right above the tree line, spinning in slow, perfect motion. As they pulsed, the thing in the clearing twitched, like the light was controlling it. Each flash made it move closer, one staggering step at a time, whispering my brother's name over and over. I turned and ran. I don't remember much after that. I remember the air tasting metallic. I remember falling, sliding down the hill, dirt and branches tearing at my arms. And I remember seeing one of the orbs follow me through the trees, not flying, but gliding just above the ground, smooth and silent. Then everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying beside my truck at the base of the ridge. The sun was rising. I had no memory of getting down there. My clothes were torn, my hands burned, and my phone was gone. But there was something in my pocket. A small, black rock, perfectly round and warm to the touch, like it was alive. A week later, I got a call from a park ranger named Dale Weston. They'd found Caleb's name carved into a dead tree halfway up the ridge. Deep, shaky letters like they were burned in. Just his name. Nothing else. The ranger told me they'd also found 3 circular burn marks in the soil nearby, perfectly even, like the ground had been melted by heat. He said he'd send me photos. He never did. The next day, I heard on the news that Dale had gone missing too, last seen near the ridge. I moved away from Montana a few months later. I told myself I'd never go back. But last year, 15 years after Caleb disappeared, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small flash drive. I plugged it into my computer. There was only one video file. It was grainy, night vision footage, time-stamped October 3rd, 2007, 2:17 a.m. The same night my brother vanished. The camera seemed to be lying on the ground, facing upward. At first, all I could see were trees and fog. Then, slowly, a light drifted into frame. White, round, moving soundlessly between the trunks. The lens adjusted, and there, in the glow, I saw a silhouette. It was Caleb. His face was blank, his skin pale like that thing I saw in the clearing, but his mouth was moving, forming words the camera's mic barely picked up. "It's not the sky, Lance. It's the ground." Then the video cut out. That was 2 months ago. Since then, I've been having the same dream every night. I'm back at the ridge, standing in the circle of ash. The lights are above me, closer now, brighter, almost blinding, and I can hear a voice inside my head whispering in Caleb's tone. We're still here. When I wake up, the black rock from my pocket is warm again. And sometimes, just before dawn, I swear I can see the faintest white-blue glow reflecting off my window. The same 3 lights, waiting for me to come back. People always talk about how peaceful the mountains are, but when you've spent years patrolling them alone, you realize peace is just silence. And silence has its own kind of noise. I worked as a volunteer ranger in San Juan National Forest, Colorado, back in 2015. I wasn't a full ranger, just part-time, helping hikers, checking trails, logging weather conditions. There was one route the older rangers called the Hollow Trail. They used to joke that the trail doesn't like being walked at night. I always laughed it off, until that summer. It started with a missing hiker named Aaron Dale, 29 years old. His fiancée reported that he'd gone hiking alone 3 days before and never came back. I was one of the volunteers sent to help look for him. The area was remote, narrow paths, steep slopes, and old mining shafts scattered deep in the trees. By the second day, we found his tent near the creek. Everything was still there. Sleeping bag, food, flashlight, but no sign of him. His boots were gone, though, which meant he left the tent on foot. I remember the air that morning, heavy and damp, like the world was holding its breath. We split into pairs. I went with a local ranger named Edgar Harlow, a man in his 60s who'd worked these woods for decades. He didn't say much on the hike, just kept glancing at the treetops, muttering, "You ever notice how quiet it gets up here?" I had, actually. There weren't even insects buzzing, not a single bird call, just the sound of our boots crunching the dirt. Around 5 p.m., we found a trail marker that looked wrong. It was carved into a tree, deep, uneven, not like the official markers. The carving showed a spiral shape, like a circle with a line slicing through it. Edgar frowned. "That's not ours," he said. "That's old. Don't touch it." We kept moving. The sun started dropping fast, turning the forest orange, then gray. We decided to camp halfway up the ridge instead of heading back in the dark. The radio signal was weak, but working. We checked in with the base, ate our rations, and settled down. But sometime around 2 a.m., I woke up to footsteps outside the tent. At first, I thought it was Edgar, but then I realized whoever it was barefoot. The steps were soft, dragging through the pine needles. I unzipped the flap slowly, shining my flashlight. Nothing. Then, I saw a figure about 10 feet away, standing near a tree. Not moving, not turning, just standing. I whispered, "Edgar." No answer. The beam caught the figure's back, and I saw it was completely naked, skin grayish-white, with long black hair hanging down to its shoulders. I froze. The thing twitched, not like a person startled, but like something trying to remember how to move. It turned its head slightly, and I swear I heard a low clicking sound, like someone cracking their neck over and over. Then, it ran. Not away. Through the trees. Fast. Silent. Unnatural. By the time I shouted for Edgar, the forest was already dead quiet again. He came stumbling out of his tent with his rifle, asking what I saw. When I told him, his face went pale. He muttered, "You shouldn't have looked." You never look if you hear them walking. I didn't understand what he meant, but he refused to sleep the rest of the night. He sat by the fire, staring into the dark until dawn. When the sun rose, we found footprints near the camp. Bare feet, small, like a child's, but deep in the soil, like someone had been pressing down hard. There were 3 sets of them, all circling our tents. We kept hiking up toward Hollow Trail Ridge that morning. The forest there looked wrong. The trees were thicker, darker, and covered in carvings like the spiral we saw earlier. Some were freshly cut, sap still dripping from the bark. At one point, Edgar stopped and whispered, "He's not lost. He's taken." I asked what he meant. He pointed to one of the spirals and said, "That mark? That's not a sign, it's a door. You follow it too far, and the mountain takes you." I thought he was joking, but he wasn't smiling. We reached the ridge before sunset and radioed base again. No response. Static. That's when we found Aaron Dale's boots, sitting neatly on a rock beside a dried-up creek. Right next to them, a small pile of teeth. Human teeth. I felt my stomach twist. Edgar took one look and said, "We're leaving." Now. But the air shifted. The forest went silent again. And from the trees behind us, I heard whistling. A single, high-pitched note. Then another. Then 2 more. Answering it from different directions. We grabbed our packs and started down the trail fast. But the path didn't look the same anymore. The trees had changed, bending inward, like the forest was closing around us. We reached a clearing that I didn't recognize, and the GPS started glitching, jumping coordinates, spinning like we were moving in circles. Edgar stopped suddenly, eyes wide. "They're walking with us." He turned, raising his rifle, and I saw movement behind him, a blur darting between the trees. Then another. Then 3. All silent, all barefoot, all moving in the same slow, twitching way. We ran. Branches whipped my face, roots caught my boots, but I didn't stop. I could hear them behind me, that strange, rhythmic clicking echoing through the forest. When I looked back once, just once, I saw a pale arm reach out from between 2 trees, fingers impossibly long, nails dark like stone. It touched the ground, and where it touched, The dirt turned black. We didn't stop running until the forest finally opened back into the main trail, where the air felt normal again. The sun was rising behind us. Edgar dropped to his knees, gasping, whispering, "Don't come back. Hollow Trail isn't ours anymore." When we got back to base, the Rangers searched the ridge for weeks. They found no trace of Arendelle, no footprints, no signs of struggle. Just one last spiral carved deep into a pine tree, freshly made. A week later, Edgar quit. He packed up his gear, moved to Wyoming, and never worked in the woods again. I stayed one more month before leaving too. But sometimes, late at night, when I drive past the forest edge, I swear I still hear that same high-pitched whistling from somewhere deep in the trees. And once, just once, I saw it again. A pale figure standing by the trailhead, still, silent, watching. It's been 10 years since that summer in the San Juan Mountains, but sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear it. That thin, hollow whistling slipping through the pine trees. And no matter how far I move from Colorado, it follows me in dreams. Last year, I went back. Not for work, not for duty, for answers. After Edgar passed away in 2023, his daughter mailed me a small box with his old Ranger notebook inside. Between the coffee-stained pages, I found sketches, drawings of those spiral carvings, all dated between 1976 and 2015. Each sketch had one note scribbled beside it. The hollow takes what it wants. The last page had a rough map of Hollow Trail Ridge, and underlined in red pen, one word, door. That was enough to drag me back there. When I reached the trailhead, it was boarded off. A faded sign read, "Area closed, landslide risk." But the wood was old, half rotten. I slipped around it easily. The forest felt thicker than I remembered. The trees grew closer, darker, as if they'd swallowed more light over the years. The deeper I went, the less the world made sense. No birds, no wind, just the faint whistle, carried low, almost like a breath. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but I couldn't. I had to see it again. About 2 miles in, I found the first spiral, carved deep into a pine, sap still glistening in the cut. That shouldn't have been possible. The carving looked fresh, not a decade old. I took out my flashlight, tracing the grooves with my fingers. It was warm, not just from the sun. It felt like skin. Then, a whisper, soft right behind me. "Travis." I spun around, nothing there. But the forest wasn't still anymore. The trees seemed to be breathing, their trunks shifting slightly, creaking like ribs expanding. I started recording everything on my phone. The camera light flickered, the image glitching every few seconds. In one frame, I swear I caught movement. A pale face between two trunks, eyes black, mouth open but silent. When I blinked, it was gone. I followed the old trail markers up the ridge. Near the top, the ground began to change. The dirt was dark, almost oily, and cold mist clung to the air even though the sun was out. That's when I saw it again. The circle of spirals, dozens of them carved into the earth, forming a wide ring around an open pit. The hole was maybe 10 feet wide, pitch black, and reeked of damp rot. It wasn't there before. I crouched near the edge and tossed in a small stone. No sound, no echo, nothing. I pulled out my phone to take a video, and that's when I heard it. That same high-pitched whistle. Only this time, it wasn't far away. It was coming from the hole. Then something climbed out. It wasn't fast. It wasn't violent. It was quiet, disturbingly quiet, as pale hands reached up and gripped the edge, pulling a shape into the light. It looked like a man, but its skin was stretched thin, like candle wax melted over bones. Its mouth opened and closed soundlessly, and its chest jerked as if trying to breathe air for the first time in years. And then I saw the scar on its shoulder, the same tattoo Aaron Dale had in his missing person photo. He was still alive. Or what was left of him was. I whispered his name and he looked up. The moment our eyes met, his mouth stretched open, far too wide, and that horrible whistling sound poured out. Except now it wasn't one tone. It was many. Dozens. Hundreds. Voices screaming through a single hole. The trees around me began to shake. The spirals carved into their bark started to glow faint orange, like burning metal. I stumbled back, but the ground moved, literally shifted beneath my feet, as if something massive was turning underneath the soil. The hole widened, cracking the earth. From below, I saw hands, pale, dozens of them, pushing up, clawing for the surface. Every one of them was whispering the same word. "Stay!" I ran. I didn't stop, not even when branches tore my skin or roots caught my legs. The whistling chased me through the forest, rising higher, faster, until it sounded like wind screaming through a tunnel. When I finally burst onto the main trail again, the sound stopped. Just ended. I collapsed, shaking, gasping for air. And when I turned back toward the ridge, the spirals were gone. The trees stood still and silent, like nothing had happened. I made it home that night, covered in dirt and cuts. I uploaded the footage from my phone, but the files were corrupted. Every single one, except one photo, a still image, blurry, low light. It showed the clearing, and right at the center, the dark pit glowing faintly orange. But there was something else in the photo. Behind the pit, carved deep into the bark of a tree, was my name. Travis Holbrook. The letters looked freshly cut. I don't go near the woods anymore. I moved to Kansas, miles from any mountain, but it doesn't matter. Sometimes at night, I still wake to that same faint whistle just outside my window. And when I check my phone camera, for a split second, before it glitches out, I can see that spiral again, glowing faintly in the dark. I think maybe Edgar was right. The hollow trail doesn't like being walked, and once you do, it remembers you. They say the mountains keep their own kind of secrets, but in my years working up north, I've learned something worse. The mountains don't just keep secrets, they bury them. Back in 2018, I worked maintenance for Payette National Forest in Idaho. Coldwater Pass was one of my assigned routes, a narrow, high-altitude trail used mostly by elk hunters and the occasional tourist. It wasn't a bad job, but I hated that pass. There was something about it, the way sound disappeared there, the way fog hung even on clear mornings, that never felt right. My partner that season was a guy named Roy Tennant, mid-40s, solid, quiet type. He'd worked the mountains long before me and didn't scare easy. But even he admitted, Coldwater Pass gave him the creeps. "You ever feel like we're the ones being watched?" he once said, while we were clearing fallen branches off the road. I laughed, told him he'd been drinking too much coffee. But deep down, I knew exactly what he meant. It started the third week of October. The air had already turned sharp and cold, biting through our gloves. We were checking a remote cabin owned by the Park Service, the Coldwater Ranger Hut, built back in the 1950s, now used only for seasonal equipment. We had to hike the last mile since the road was iced over. The forest was dead silent that day. No birds, no squirrels, not even wind. The snow made this strange crunching echo under our boots, like it was answering us. When we reached the cabin, everything seemed fine at first, except for one thing. There were footprints in the snow, leading from the woods to the porch. Barefoot. Roy frowned. "Could be some dumb hiker," he muttered, but his tone said he didn't believe it. The prints stopped at the front steps. No return tracks, just a single line of prints walking to the cabin and vanishing at the door. The door was locked, like it should have been. No signs of breaking. Inside the cabin was freezing. The air felt heavy, stale, like it hadn't been opened in months. We checked the radio batteries, the propane tank, the firewood, all routine stuff. But I noticed something odd. On the kitchen table, under a thin layer of dust, someone had carved a word with a knife. Below. Roy just stared at it. Then he looked at the wooden floor. Old planks, uneven. He tapped one with his boot. Hollow. There was a crawl space underneath. He kneeled, pulled one of the loose boards up, and aimed his flashlight inside. At first, all I saw was dirt and cobwebs. Then the light caught something else. Fabric. A sleeve. He reached in and pulled out an old, dirt-covered jacket. Heavy, torn, and stiff from the cold. Inside the pocket was a metal badge, rusted but still readable. Idaho Wildlife Service, Officer Daniel H. Moore. Roy turned pale. That name wasn't new. Moore had gone missing in 1979. They never found his body. We didn't say a word for a full minute. Then Roy whispered, "Let's pack up and head back." Now we left the cabin locked exactly how we found it. But as we stepped outside, something changed. There were no footprints anymore. The ones we saw earlier, gone. Snow was untouched, pure white, as if it hadn't been disturbed in days. That night, back at base camp, Roy didn't speak much. He kept rubbing his temples and muttering about how that jacket shouldn't have been there. I tried to laugh it off, saying maybe some hiker found it and left it in the cabin. But he just shook his head and said something I'll never forget. "You don't get it, Owen. I was here in 2005 when the last guy disappeared. Same cabin, same date, same damn footprints. I didn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my cabin. Slow, steady, crunching in the frost. I thought maybe Roy couldn't sleep either. So I got up and opened the door. Nobody. But across the snow, about 30 feet away, I saw a man standing near the tree line. Tall. Thin. Wearing what looked like an old ranger coat. I shouted, "Roy!" No answer. The man didn't move. I blinked, and he was gone. Next morning, I told Roy what I'd seen. He looked up slowly, eyes bloodshot, and said, "Yeah. He comes around when the ground's frozen. Always does." That's when I realized this wasn't the first time he'd seen him. 2 days later, we went back up to Coldwater Pass to check the radio relay near the ridge. Roy insisted we avoid the cabin, but there was only one route up the mountain, and it passed right by it. The snow was deeper this time, half a foot thick. No animal prints, no wind, just white stillness, and that faint pressure in my chest, like being watched. As we approached the cabin, I saw it again. Footprints, barefoot, leading from the trees, straight to the door. Roy stopped walking. "Don't go near it," he said. But I had to know. I followed the prints slowly, heart pounding. And then I noticed something strange. Each print was filled with a thin layer of ice, frozen solid, as if the tracks weren't made that day, but long ago. The closer I got, the colder the air became. My breath turned thick, like fog. I reached the porch. The door was slightly open, just an inch. "Roy?" I whispered. But he was still standing on the trail, shaking his head. I pushed the door gently. It creaked open. Inside, the cabin was exactly how we left it, except the table was clean now. No dust. No carving. But something else caught my eye. The jacket. The one we'd pulled from the crawl space. It was hanging on a chair. And on the back of that chair, scratched into the wood, was a fresh message. "Don't leave him below." That's when I heard it. A faint tapping sound coming from under the floor. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, rhythmic, like fingers on wood. I backed up toward the door, trying not to make a sound. But then I heard it. A voice. Muffled. Coming from the crawlspace. A man's voice, weak, trembling, whispering the same words over and over. It's cold. Down here. Help me up. I froze. Roy burst in, grabbed my arm and yanked me outside. He didn't stop until we were halfway down the ridge. I asked what he heard. He said nothing. Just kept walking fast, almost running. That night, Roy packed his truck and left camp without saying goodbye. No call, no message. He just drove away. 2 days later, I got a call from the park superintendent. They'd found Roy's truck abandoned 20 miles east. Engine running, driver's door open, radio still on. No sign of him. I went back up to the cabin one last time with a small team of deputies. It took us 5 hours to reach it. When we got there, it was gone. Not destroyed. Not collapsed. Gone. Just a patch of flattened snow where it used to stand. We dug for hours, thinking maybe the foundation gave out. But there was nothing. No debris, no nails, no wood. Only one thing buried a few inches down. A rusted ranger badge, nameplate still attached. Roy Tennant. After they found Roy's badge, the department opened an official missing persons case. But by winter's end, the snow made Coldwater Pass unreachable. I took leave from work, but I couldn't rest. Every night I heard that same sound in my dreams. Tap, 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 like someone trapped beneath wood. It wasn't just a nightmare. It felt like a memory, a warning that didn't want to fade. By February, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my gear, borrowed a snowcat from a friend, and headed back up there alone. Everyone told me I was insane. Maybe I was. But something inside me said I owed Roy the truth. The road was almost invisible beneath 4 feet of snow. Every few minutes I'd lose traction, engine whining as I forced the snowcat forward. Fog rolled in halfway up the pass. That same heavy fog that swallowed sound. It felt like I was entering a world that didn't belong to the living anymore. When I reached the ridge where the cabin used to be, I stopped. The clearing looked different. Wider. Flatter. Almost like something had been dragged away beneath the snow. I turned off the engine. Everything went silent. Not the kind of silence you hear, but the kind that presses against your skull. Then I saw it. The chimney. Half buried, jutting out from the snow like a tombstone. The cabin wasn't gone. It was under the mountain. I grabbed my shovel and started digging. Hours passed, daylight fading to dull gray. As I dug, the air grew colder. Unnaturally cold, like stepping into a freezer. Finally, my shovel hit wood. It was the cabin roof. But the boards were warped, blackened as if scorched. I found the edge of the hatch we used to open the crawlspace, and that's when I heard it again. That faint, deliberate tapping. Tap, tap, tap. I froze. My breath came out in short bursts. I whispered, "Roy?" The tapping stopped. Then, from beneath the snow, I heard a voice, faint, muffled, choking. "Help me, please." I didn't think. I just started digging faster. My gloves tore, my hands bled. I scraped until I could pry the hatch open, and a wave of rotten, icy air hit me so hard it knocked me to my knees. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness below. There was a space, small, maybe 4 feet high, lined with old stone walls. And in the middle was a body. It wasn't Roy, at least not anymore. The skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over bones. The uniform, ranger coat, name patch half frozen, said it was him. But his eyes were open, glassy, and fixed on the opening above. I whispered his name again. And that's when his mouth moved. Not much, just a twitch, a half breath, but I heard it clearly. "Not me." Then, from behind him, something shifted. A shadow, Human-shaped, but wrong. Long arms, thin as branches, bending in impossible ways. I stumbled back, dropped the flashlight. In the flicker of the light, I saw the figure crawl forward, slowly, deliberately, until it was inches from Roy's body. And then it looked up. Its face was a blur, stretched white skin, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, and a mouth that looked stitched shut. But it was grinning. I slammed the hatch shut and scrambled back through the snow. The tapping started again, faster, louder. Then I heard footsteps, coming from under the ground, following me. I ran toward the tree line, stumbling through waist-deep snow. The fog was thick now, swirling like smoke. And somewhere behind me, something whispered, "Don't leave him below." I didn't stop until I reached the snowcat. I started the engine, floored it, and didn't look back. But just as I reached the end of the pass, the radio crackled to life. A voice came through, distorted by static. "This is Officer Moore, requesting assistance at Coldwater Hut." I froze. That was the same man whose badge we'd found, dead since 1979. I switched the radio off, shaking. Outside in the mirror, I saw the fog trailing behind me, like something was following. When I got back to town, I filed my report. The sheriff didn't believe a word of it. They sent a search crew 2 weeks later, found no sign of the cabin, no tracks, no structure, nothing. Just snow. I quit that spring, sold my truck, left Idaho for good. But every year around October, when the first snow falls, I start hearing it again. Tap, 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 like someone reminding me that I didn't really leave anything behind. It's still there, below. They say some places never wanted people to come back. Black Hollow Peak is one of them. I first heard about the mountain from a hunter named Travis at a bar near Helena, Montana. He said, "You ever want a shot of something the world ain't supposed to see? Go to Black Hollow." But don't stay after sundown, I laughed it off. Thought it was just drunk talk. But when I got home, curiosity got the better of me. I searched for Black Hollow Peak online. Nothing. No map markers. No hiking trails. Just a few old Reddit threads and forum posts about strange lights, missing campers, and a post from 2003 that said simply, "If you find the old fire tower, don't look inside." That was all the invitation I needed. I'm a wildlife photographer by trade, been doing it for over a decade. I've been chased by bears, bitten by snakes, nearly frozen to death once, but nothing scared me like that mountain would. In early October 2021, I packed my gear, camera, drone, tent, shotgun, and drove west along an unmarked service road for hours. The farther I went, the fewer signs I saw. No phone signal, no gas stations, just long stretches of pines and cliffs. Finally, my GPS froze. All it showed was a single line, and a blinking red dot where the signal died. That's where I set camp. The first day was peaceful. Quiet forest, golden light through the trees, elk tracks in the mud. But there was something strange about the air. It carried a low hum, like a generator running far away. At first, I thought it was wind echoing between the cliffs, but it was constant, rhythmic, like something mechanical buried deep underground. That night, while reviewing footage, I heard it again, the hum, except now it sounded closer. And layered beneath it, something else. A voice. Faint. Female. Whispering words I couldn't make out. I stepped out of the tent, flashlight in hand. The forest was still. No wind. No animals. Even the crickets were silent. Then, deep in the dark, I saw a light. White. Flickering. Coming from the ridge above, maybe a quarter mile away. I grabbed my camera, zoomed in. It was a tower. An old fire lookout, half collapsed, perched on the cliff edge. The light was coming from inside. I should have stayed in the tent. But photographers never do what they should. I started hiking toward it, keeping my beam low to avoid tripping. As I got closer, I realized how old the structure was. The stairs were rusted, half missing. One side had caved in. The smell, damp wood and something else. Sour, like rotten flowers. At the top was a small observation room with shattered windows. Inside, an old desk, a broken radio, and a lantern flickering weakly. The flame shouldn't have been burning. There was no fuel tank, no smell of kerosene, just that dim, steady light. And beside the lantern, a single photo. Curled, faded, water-damaged. It showed 4 people, rangers maybe, standing right where I was, smiling. Except their eyes looked wrong. Too wide, too black. At the bottom, someone had written in pen, "They're still watching." I heard something creak behind me, a footstep. I spun around, flashlight up. Nothing. Just the sound of wind whistling through broken glass. Then the radio, the one on the table, crackled to life. "Nathan." My name, a whisper, clear as day. I froze. "You shouldn't be here." The voice was my own. I stumbled backward, heart hammering. My shoulder hit the wall, and the whole tower groaned under my weight. I ran down the stairs, or what was left of them, nearly slipping twice before reaching the ground. When I looked up again, the lantern in the tower was out. No light. Total darkness. But I swear, someone was standing in the window watching me. I sprinted back to camp, zipped the tent shut, grabbed my camera, and replayed the audio. Sure enough, my name was there. My voice. But layered under it, deeper, I heard another tone. A low rumble that made my eardrums ache. Then, the screen froze. The audio warped, and I heard the voice again, clearer this time. "Don't turn around." I dropped the camera. Outside, something brushed against the tent. Soft, slow, like fingertips dragging across fabric. Then silence. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I passed out. But when I woke up, the tent door was unzipped, and my camera was gone. I searched for hours that morning. No footprints, no signs of animals. But when I looked up the ridge, I saw something that made my stomach drop. My camera, hanging from the tower railing, like someone had placed it there for me to find. It took everything in me to go back up. The path was colder than before, frost biting the ground even though it wasn't that cold yet. When I reached the tower again, the camera was swinging gently in the wind. I grabbed it, checked the memory card. There was one new video, time-stamped 3:17 a.m. I pressed play. The footage showed me, sleeping inside the tent. The camera was outside, zoomed in perfectly, framed center. Then, a shadow moved across the lens. Tall, thin, long arms, moving in strange, jerky motions. It stopped near the tent and crouched. A pale hand brushed the fabric, just like I'd heard. And then, the thing turned, directly at the camera. Its face was gray, smooth, featureless except for 2 dark holes where eyes should have been. And it was smiling, not with a mouth, but with creases that split open across its skin. I dropped the camera and threw up. When I looked again, the screen had gone black. The battery was dead. I ran, didn't pack, didn't stop. Just ran until I hit the main road near dusk. A truck driver saw me and pulled over. Said I looked like I'd seen a ghost. I told him where I came from. He went pale and said, "Boy, there ain't been a tower up there in 40 years. Burned down in the 80s, I thought he was joking. But when I drove back 2 weeks later with a ranger, there really was nothing there. Just blackened beams buried in moss. No tower, no photo, no sign of my campsite. Only one thing left behind. A lantern, unlit, sitting on a stump. And scratched into the metal was a single sentence. They're still watching. I thought I was done with that mountain. But some places don't let you go just because you left. A month later, I started getting strange notifications on my laptop. Photos, ones I didn't take. They were all dark, grainy. The same forest, the same tower. And in every picture there was a figure. Tall. Still. Standing in the shadows. The sender was listed as Black Hollow at null.net. I tried tracing it. Nothing. No domain. No IP. Just nothing. I told myself it was a virus, maybe some prank. But one night, I clicked open a photo that made me freeze. It was my apartment window, taken from the street below. And in the reflection of the glass, someone was standing behind me. That was when I realized, whatever followed me from Black Hollow, it wasn't stuck there anymore. I packed up and drove back to Helena to find Travis, the hunter who first told me about the mountain. The bar was closed. Locals said it had burned down 2 weeks earlier. Travis? Missing. They found his truck parked near the trailhead of Black Hollow Ridge. On the seat was his rifle, and a note that read, "It's not a place. It's a door." I drove up there again, this time in daylight. The forest was silent, the road half-eaten by moss. When I reached the clearing where my camp had been, I saw something that shouldn't have been there. The fire tower, standing again, perfectly intact. Same beams, same shape, like it had never burned. My head was spinning. I climbed halfway up before realizing I wasn't breathing right. The air felt too thick, heavy, almost buzzing, like the mountain itself was humming. And then I saw it. The photo again, the same 4 people smiling, their black eyes staring through the paper. Only this time, there was a 5th figure, in the corner, blurry, wearing my jacket. I dropped the photo. It fell face down on the floor. When I picked it up again, the image had changed. Now all 5 people were looking directly at me. Smiling, I stumbled down the stairs, nearly falling the last few feet. When I hit the ground, the hum grew louder, almost deafening now, vibrating through my teeth. The trees around the clearing began to move, not sway, move. Their shadows stretched unnaturally, reaching toward me like smoke. And inside that sound, that endless hum, I heard words, hundreds of voices whispering together, saying the same thing. Stay, stay, stay. I ran. Branches tore at my clothes. The ground felt alive beneath my boots. I could hear footsteps behind me. Dozens, maybe hundreds, chasing but never touching. When I burst through the tree line, the hum stopped. I turned around. The forest was normal again. No tower, no sound, just stillness. I called the ranger station from my truck, told them someone rebuilt the tower, that it wasn't safe. They sent a small team up there the next day. I waited at the base for hours, engine running, heart pounding. When they finally came down, their faces were pale. One of them, a woman named Ranger Coletta, walked up to me and said quietly, "Nathan, there's no tower up there." I thought she was lying, until she handed me something they found on the ground. It was my camera, caked in dirt. Memory card still inside. That night, I watched the footage. The last file was dated the same night I first camped at Black Hollow. I pressed play. It started normal, me talking to the lens, laughing, saying goodnight. Then the screen flickered, and the video changed. It showed me standing at the top of the fire tower, staring straight into the lens. My eyes were black. My smile was wrong, and the voice that came through wasn't mine. "He's still watching." The screen went dark. I left Montana the next morning, sold my gear. Haven't taken a single photo since. Sometimes, though, when I close my eyes, I still see flashes. A tower on fire, figures watching from the tree line, and a face that looks like mine, whispering through the hum of the mountain. You took their picture. Now you belong in it. I haven't told anyone this before. But 3 nights ago, while walking home, I saw a faint orange flicker between the pines behind my apartment, like a lantern light. I took one picture on my phone, just one, before running inside. When I checked the image later, the forest was empty. But in the reflection of the window, I saw that tower, still standing, still waiting, and I swear, in the window beside it, someone waved,